Hello, everybody. Welcome. Where I am right now, it is morning.
Oh, that would be terrifying.
An old man is feeding ducks.
No, that's that's the male, that's a female.
I didn't know that. Yeah,
The males are always more colorful.
And he's holding court, as some might say.
And are you?
I've been listening lately occasionally to lectures on the work of Ibn Arabi. A deeply profound human being, though I hesitate to use that phrase because what it means to us moderns can only be categorically similar to what it must have meant to be or know Ibn Arabi. We have in English various terms that indicate the superlative. That member of a category which both belongs to the category and effectively destroys it by exceeding, sometimes explosively, meaning ever more exceeding, right? The qualities, form, quiddities, imminences, and so forth that would ordinarily apply. Somewhere on earth there has been an apple that was so profound that to take a bite of it was to perish of ecstasy. Now, most of us will not believe this, and it's reasonable to doubt it. However, the universe is not reasonable. There is a layer or a blanket within the thickness of which reason functions. And this does not reasonably entitle us or suggest that wild fantasies or invented nonsenses are true. Rather, there are things that may resemble transcendental logics, whereby we could navigate beyond the reasonable if we are skillful in our interior, not necessarily in thought, or at least not in the kinds of thought we are commonly familiar with, the modes of thinking. there are human beings who have existed and perhaps do exist at the moment that are so not merely human that we would be better off thinking of them in many ways as distinct from the category. Surely Ibn Arabi was such a human. How would I know this? Well, by signs. So, a long time ago, my friend Dr. K, the frenemy of my intelligence, showed me a book that he said was very dangerous. And he had rarely, if ever, used such nomenclature previously. And the book was called The Meaning of Man. It's a Sufi book. Good morning. And in the frontispieces, in the first few pages, there are diagrams. Morning. These diagrams illustrated principles, fundamental principles that underlie perhaps everything. Without these principles, there'd be no existences. And they are very simple diagrams. They are relatively geometric, illustrating, for example, the relationship between the point and the circle in a cone. And then a variety of relationships between various modes of inner and outer. And when I saw these diagrams, I knew, first of all, they were familiar to me, though I had not seen them before as diagrams. They were familiar to me from my experience with the mind I sometimes refer to as toy maker. This, for me, is kind of a code word. And in fact, the diagrams themselves could be understood as toys. What are they toys of? Right? Because a Hot Wheel is a toy of a car. They are toys of principles that are fundamental to the possibility of minds. They are visual toys. And I recognized both the content of the diagrams and their structure. They were familiar to me from what I experienced in 2002. Whatever that may have been. It's not my intention to discuss that at length here, so I will mostly leave it alone. In listening to Ibn Arabi, or in listening to anyone who wisely explains the structure, meanings, and numerism of Hebrew, Aramaic, or Arabic alphabets. There is a similar recognition. And right now the mid-morning sun is shining on the water disturbed by wind. And it is producing the scintillation of many momentary sparklets. From certain angles only are these apparent to the eye. And these sparklings, you know, the old, Bishop Berkeley question, if a tree falls in the forest, etc. It seems relatively clear that, for example, if there are no eyes in the world, or if eyes could be excluded from some place, along with that exclusion goes away all visible phenomena as we understand it, such that, there are certain particular visible phenomena that disappear for sure. One of them is rainbows, because the rainbow must be participated to exist. Another is the scintillation of the light on the water. That scintillation is dependent on the complex relationship between the light, the water, and living eyes. It is not there without eyes. And this, by the way, is part of where materialist paradigms fall apart, because they dismiss participation, thereby dismissing the mind with which they refute the existence of participation. There are certain kinds of objections that, if they were true, would eliminate the capacity for there to be minds. And what I was thinking about today when I began this recording is a kind of light, but not the kind necessarily emitted by the sun or lamps, though certainly around here, without the sun's light, we should realize there would be no minds around here. There would certainly be no minds encapsulated in physical bodies. But the kind of light I'm thinking about today is the kind that in English it would be very interesting to know the sound of this word in many other languages, and particularly in, say, Sanskrit, which is perhaps moksha, or Arabic, which I do not know, or Hebrew. What the peculiar concerns so funny. That when drawn together around the angles of the circle, the circle being perhaps the way of seeing in the mind's kind of seeing, produced the word enlightenment. Now, in the first moment of my experience in 2002, and I really, to be very honest, or to be, to be honest, I don't know what it means to be very honest. Either one is honest or not, perhaps, but maybe there are degrees of honesty. I was inventing terms relative to the network of human minds when seen as an environment, as a dimension. And as I went, I didn't actually go, but as I turned in my interior, as I turned toward my imagination, which is ordinarily, quote, dark inside, unquote, it was as if in my mind there was a new compartment which in my memory seems to have been off to the left. Okay. Two little girls are sort of dance running along, and they're very little. They're like 2.5 or 3 or something. They're dancing along the path in dresses, singing together. I doubt they're singing any actual song, though it is possible they were. That certainly creates a light in the heart, if not the heart and the mind. In any case, unlike any experience I had ever had previously, and I mean wildly unlike, there was suddenly a light in my mind. It seemed white. It was a white light. And the moment I noticed the light, it drew me into a kind of a place within my being unknown to me, and began to teach me impossible things with geometries that seemed to unlock features of my intelligence previously unavailable to me, though perhaps hinted at in moments of creativity. And it was as if a being that had created my mind or was intimately involved in its originations and perhaps in generating its structures and so forth, its abilities and so on, in a way not entirely dissimilar but still dissimilar to the relationship between a coder and a program. It was as if it was unlocking something which had previously been locked. And woe be unto those who might attempt to describe the results of such an unlocking, because good luck. So there was literally, or fairly literally, in this moment, a light in my mind. And I like to think that the echoes and reflections of those experiences which both afflicted and at a loss for a word I'm seeking. Which both afflicted and liberated, or hyperbolized my interiority, my humanity, my intellect, my creativity, particularly, strangely, my vocabulary. Over a short period of time, I became capable of articulating things that were previously unknown to my ability. Profusions of metaphors and parables swam in my consciousness and were awe-inspiring.
Wilder, this way. Can't go down there. Don't go down there.
So I had an experience of an inner light. Now, surely if we dream and our dreams take the form of seeings, without presuming that all people's dreams do, I have dreamt without seeings. I have had, rather terrifyingly, dreams in blackness. No seeing. The dream occurs, there are relationships, situations, transformations. There are no seeings. And this might be like the absence of enlightenment in a way. All light departs from the mind. Now, it is natural. Most of us will experience something related to the phases of the moon, where the inner light becomes very bright, and then it begins to dim, and then perhaps it disappears, and then it is reborn, and so forth. When we make a discovery that is not merely mechanically profound, but relationally profound.
The other he had to show for a midterm. But he did.
A discovery that, for example, changes what it means to be myself, or to be human, or to be alive, or to have a mind. Something that affects either the holophores, which are the roots of identity in language. One of those is the world, another one is friend, another one is food, another one is dream, another one is mirror. And there are different feeling tones to the kinds of transformations of these roots. Also things that affect the uniphore, or possibly a uniphore, but especially the uniphore. In other words, what the universe is or is doing or is being, or my relationship to it, or so forth. When insight arises and we feel this sense of surprise, and we might even, exclaim, ah, or oh, or, make some sound because we momentarily overcome in a way not dissimilar to, well, in a way that resembles part of how we may respond to humor. We don't try to laugh, but we are willing to let go of control enough that laughter overcomes us. Right? And it's similar with real insight. When we experience this, it is as if a long night is suddenly pierced by the dawn sun, acknowledging that in ordinary situations, dawn is gradual. There is a glow, the glow over time increases, but if we sped up time so that the interval between the first hint of a glow and the sun directly shining in our eyes happened very quickly, it would be instantaneous. It would be like, boom, there is the sun. And insight is similar, at least analogically. To the onset of light in the mind. But what kind of light is this? Well, Ibn Arabi is familiar with this light, and it is a more than merely living light, and it is a companion, and it is a parent in both senses of the word, right? Like APP and PAR, or A, space PAR, a parent. In fact, without this kind of light, nothing is apparent, nothing can be apparent in consciousness, and yet vast epochs of human thought have fiercely denied the existence of this light. And it's very interesting and not unuseful to do so. However catastrophically dangerous the results will certainly become in some segments of such denials. And if we want to know the experience of this kind of light, then we will undertake probably, each person will have there will be a unique and complex recipe book, right? Where the peculiarities of a person's history, basis, forms, behaviors, habits, inclinations, affinities, disaffinities, all of these things will mix together. And will not directly prescribe, but will form the milieu, the context in which what we might think of as adding and subtracting on a superficial level. On a fundamental level, there's no such thing. But on a superficial level, it appears that adding and subtracting will be involved. Meaning adding certain behaviors and subtracting certain others. Adding certain frames of mind, intent, will, purpose, and subtracting others. And for each person, this will be somewhat unique. Even though there are universal things which mostly, for many people, warning, will take the form of what we would think of as privations or subtractions. Right? If you want to seek this light, which is the light not merely of your own, it is the light at the origin point of your awareness, of your consciousness, of your mind, of your mentation. But it is fundamentally the light of origin, and thus the light of the divine. And if you want to seek this light, this was discussed recently. Can I recall? One of the methods is purification, which is subtraction. There is another method, and I cannot recall what I was told Arabi said about this at the moment, but it probably resembles something like simmering. Those who meditate may have many different purposes. Meditation often, well, not often, sometimes produces the sudden or the gradual onset. Now, the ironic thing here is that though I frame this as illumination, it may also appear as the total absence of illumination, a kind of darkness, a living darkness. In a way. Okay, I have too many clothes on. The sun is bright and hot, and I'm getting sweaty. Maybe I'll just go ahead and sweat. Okay. I'll simmer in my own sauce.
Yeah, a lot of times you look and go, oh, this is great.
And they just want to kill them all, maim them. I mean, the number, all they ate, all these names.
If we imagine conception as participated by origin, such that the features surrounding sexuality and fertilization are partly material and partly transcendental, so that the transcendental participates. Then it is as if a spark comes alive between the beings who participate the fertilization, and the spark is at once brighter than the sun and dipped in perfect blackness. And in the beginning, that brightness is visible to humans. In the same way, those little girls, the brightness of their spirits, new to the world, or renewed in the world. And the brightness is metaphoric, but there is a perspective from which it is not metaphoric. There is a way of seeing in which we would actually see bright light around these little girls. But it's also dipped in shadow in that it is hidden, and it is sealed away. It is protected from the world, from the humans. Perhaps in the way that a box makes secret its contents to observers. And also, the box is sealed so that both the contents cannot be altered or seen or known, and so that we will know if the box has been tampered with to some degree. And so our minds are like this. And when the light appeared in my mind and began teaching me, in essence, it dissolved part of the box. Not so much that I would be slain in ecstasy, but enough that I would experience the what's this word? The quickening of my soul and intellect together, two wings on the same bird. My origin and my capacity for forms of knowledge that are not like the humans. They are like the principles without which human knowledge cannot exist. I'm not a Platonist per se, in the sense that I crudely understand the idea of perfect forms, but there do exist principles that, for example, make it possible for there to be birds. Right? Imagine a transcendental seed of form that in terrestrial physical existence generates the forms of all of the birds, or all of the insects, or all of the fish, or all of the snakes. Now, some will say, no, you're a Platonist. Maybe they're right. I'm not terribly confused. And I'm not actually trying to make a truth claim here. I'm saying it is useful to think as if such things are true, and many of the things that are meta-true cannot be thought of in terms of, is this the case or not? They must be imagined as if they were the case, to be seen or understood. Which is what Owen Barfield, if I understood his writing correctly, meant when he explained the difference between what we think of as a hypothesis or theory and what the Greeks thought of that way, particularly with the word theoria.
Oh, yeah, I gotta take the dog out for a walk. So I think she said she got twice.
The women are very effusive, but it is the light of enthusiasm that animates their speech with the music of joyful relation. And this word enthu is very the phonetic construction of the word enthusiasm and the phonetic construction of the word enlightenment, though they differ in their syllabic count, are related. And means entering in this sense. And thu means origin or God or the divine. And you know, when I say the word God, you can hear the change in my music perhaps. It's not because the change in my music it would be wiser if we did not use this word. The word God, I mistrust it. It seems to objectify, define, and so forth. And by the way, that define word, that literally means to de-infinitize. It means to make cuts in the manifold of identity, so that a separated object, right, it results. And these cuts are often catastrophic, and insight is often the intelligent uncutting of identity or language. It's the opposite of surgery. It renews holism. It uniquely renews the possibilities of unity. Often. Now, sometimes it is the opposite. Sometimes it recuts. Insight can recut. Much the way a diamond might be recut, though it's a bad analogy because a diamond is a ridiculous...
Say that, but it was
That's not good. A diamond is a ridiculous hyperbole of, in a sense, wrong valuing. The problems that attach to the concept of money are catastrophically exaggerated among the humans, by the humans, in their relationships with gold, silver, diamonds, etc. But the word in English, God, would be best left unused. It's an abstract reference. And if there's one thing its referent isn't, it is abstract. In Arabic, we hear of the 99 names. These are, I do not know them in Arabic, but these are phrases such as the filler of cups, the merciful, and have implications such as the origin of truth and beauty, the one who originates.
We also look at shoes.
And this is a wiser, we should be very cautious about using speech to refer to the origin of minds. We want to be intelligent and careful about this. And in this case, indirection is very powerful. Indirection preserves unity and is often preferable to declaration, right? To suggest rather than declare. And this indirection is associated perhaps more with the proclivities of the feminine mind than those of the masculine mind, which we can think of as inclined toward compression, singleness of purpose, kind of like a sword or a knife, right? Edge-likeness, cutting. Whereas the feminine aspect is encompassment. If the circle is female, if we associate femininity with the circle for some hopefully useful and intelligent purpose, then the point at its center is masculine. But I mention this primarily because we should not point directly. There are some things we should not point directly at. We can suggest them. I am told by my friend Ryan that in traditional Blackfoot culture, people don't point. They don't do the pointing gesture that we do in the West, where you curve 3 of your fingers, touching them, perhaps the tip of your second finger with your thumb, and extend the index finger and point at something. They don't do that. I think it's wise that they don't do that. Because it's considered to be penetrative to do that. So what they might do is fold the thumb under the fingers in the kind of fist you don't want to make if you fight, and then use the first joint of the thumb, the round, right? The round thing. They might direct the gaze with that. This is much wiser than what we do. Also, if you want to know anything about the origin or divinity, you don't approach it like a man does, or like a man might, right, in an attempt to penetrate or dominate it. That will not go well for you. In nearly all cases, there could be exceptions. My own experience in thought. Incline me to doubt it. So what I'm saying is that to understand or participate in such matters, one must be receptive. One must form the receiver of the light, of the signal, of the transcendence that is origin and the divine. In a sense, one must be feminine to the often indicated and perhaps somewhat confusing masculinity of God. Oh, there, I wouldn't use that word. Let us say the all-merciful one. Similarly, nobody dominates the sun. Right? Without the sun, you will not be. You will not move. You will not think. You will not have abilities, characteristics. You won't be. There won't be arguments, philosophy, religion. None of that stuff would be going on around here. So, humans don't suddenly, well, it may be true that occasionally they do. And perhaps Ibn Arabi is an example of such a human who becomes sun-like, but not by his own power, by the results of his sensitivity, receptivity, adoration, purification, simmering, and so forth. If anyone has ever successfully known the intimate revelations of divine understanding, and it is as if there is a wheel on which there are many spokes. The knowledge we refer to as Kabbalah is not terribly dissimilar to the forms of knowledge that Ibn Arabi reveals. Although, in a way, I could see how someone could say, you insult them both by saying this. And they wouldn't be wrong. And that's not my intention. Not by a long shot. So, there is another kind of knowledge, a knowledge whose foundations precedes the possibilities of conceptual knowledge, right? In the same way that the existence of the sun precedes the possibility of human minds and bodies on earth, this knowledge precedes the possibility of all other forms of knowledge. And it is this kind of knowledge that Arabi is, I think, primarily concerned with. And I am speaking here like a child, not a master. I don't know Arabi's mind. I know little of his work. And yet it resembles the mind of one who taught me. With whose knowledge I am familiar. There is a family resemblance. Perhaps one day I may speak more at length. Of my experience and what some of the things I was taught in it were shown, things that were revealed to me. It's not my goal today. Though in a sense, it's impossible not to. I mean, in one strange sense, I've never made a recording that didn't involve the ingredients I was given so generously. And part of the reason that I don't talk directly about that a lot is that there is some danger in doing so. I'm not sure I can say exactly what the danger is. Maybe the nature of danger is like this, though in the physical world there are certain things that are fairly obvious. The danger of the sharpness of a knife to a being who has no armor, no natural armor, and easily bleeds, would be an example. You know, in English, in the West, we have tropes. And one of the tropes is just kind of ridiculous, because one wonders if, you know, what was this trope prior to a light bulb? But there's the trope of a person with a little bubble above them. The bubble is meant to show what's going on inside their head. And inside the bubble there's a light bulb, but it is shining. And this means aha. It is the surprise, the feeling of surprised and joyful discovery. Observing a gopher at the surface of the grass. The joyful surprise of discovery which throughout human history has been revered. Resembles the sudden onset of light where previously darkness prevailed. Or the angle. Right? The light is focused in from it is as if the angles around the circle, one or two are selected and lit with something at the center of this circle that reveal its nature, identity, function, though that last one's a little sketchy, anew, right, in a new way. Thus revising all previous thought, recutting it, or putting it back together, reconnecting it to unity. There is, on the one hand, probably the right hand in this case, the relation of a distinct thing to all other distinct things. But then on the other hand, there is the relation of any distinguishable being, feature, thing, etc., to all things, and perhaps to origin itself. In this way, the 99 names of God, they are not the 99 names of God. Perhaps they are the 99 names of Allah. In Islamic thought, are like the angles one may impose on a sphere or a circle. There is that which might be conceived of as a principle You know, in English we have these words, we have strange words. The ones that I know are angel, jinn, D-J-I-N-N, genie, which, by the way, is jinn. There's another one. One of my friends has named his daughter after the word that I am seeking, and I cannot find it right now. It will come to me. Also the word, now this word is problematical, I think, in English. But the word demon which we expect comes from an anglicization of the word daimon, which is probably the origin of the word diamond, or related to its origin. We have these words. These words reference non-material beings that we might imagine dwell in a layer of the universe that is not merely physical, is transcendental, is perhaps related to origin, and that there is occasional contact between humans and beings of this other order, often with disastrous results for the humans, and perhaps this is also true in my own case. But the reason that I mention these words and these beings is that in the same way that we are beings of matter, our primary basis seems to be material, these are beings of dynamism, which can be understood as, these are beings forged of light, or they are living illuminants, right? They are living light. I'm going to take a break for a few moments. I will return shortly. So I have taken a moment to update myself on the distinction between angels, daimons, demons, devas, and jinn. Turns out that angels, other than the fallen ones, are obedient. They don't have free will. They are obedient to the one who fills all cups. Jinn are more like humans. Pre-existed humans on Earth, are mischievous. Some are religious, some are not. Devas are spirit beings that are effectively resemble the idea of untrustworthy gods, bad gods. And these ideas come from various traditions, various religious traditions. But what I was trying to explain was that there could be, in the same way that there are material beings formed of stuff, some might say beings made out of food, right? Because stuff is food. There could be beings whose foundation is luminous. And what do I mean by this? I mean beings whose basis is light and thus comprise a form of what we could think of as living light. Though the light of the sun also seems either necessary to the idea of living. Or perhaps itself alive. It's very strange. Huh. I don't think I understand what the hell is going on there. I'd probably be a lot smarter if I said that more often. Unfortunately for me, I often think I understand. And usually what's going on there is that I'm overstanding. Which in fact is what we're trained to do. When I began this recording, my only clear intention was to talk about the relationship between light and insight, primarily. And I have traversed a lot of terrain that I wasn't expecting or did not have in mind. The jinn, I would be very, very surprised to discover for example, if my perspective was raised up outside of time somehow, so that I could see the arcs of human history and the origins of religions. During my own experience, I came to understand where religions come from because I was having an experience like the experiences that must have gripped prophets of old and so forth, those who wrote religious texts. I did not well, I don't know what my relationship to the identity concept prophet is. And I needn't comment on it here. But if my perspective were raised up outside of time so that I could observe the humans over time and what was going on with our species as we developed, and as our minds and languages and cognitive predispositions developed, or dispositions, I would be damn shocked to discover, as is presumed by science and most of archaeology, and presumed without cause, in my view. What is it I am claiming is presumed? It is presumed that religions and spiritual traditions and so forth are the result of nothing more than answering the problem of cause in humans who lack scientific awareness. Which is another way of saying materialist doctrine, materialist dogma. And what I mean by materialist is the not entirely unreasonable predisposition to materialist, empiricist, or eliminative materialist perspectives, i.e., there's no evidence of intelligences like ours other than ours. There's no evidence of creating intelligences or intelligences involved in the origination of life here and minds and so forth, or the universe itself. And this actually is not true. Those who pose it as true are cherry picking what they mean by evidence in a very peculiar way. And also pretending that a catastrophic, that a monumental lack of evidence, for example, anything that could possibly have generated speciation on Earth. Because whatever the fuck that was, it sure as hell wasn't mutation. Or at least not in any kind of mutation that we yet understand. Mutation actually occurs, evolution does occur, but it cannot account for the profusion of species, and certainly doesn't account for their origin, as in the title of Darwin's book. So what I think I would find quite shocking is if there was no interaction between humans and other intelligences, that mankind is a singular standout anomaly, and that our minds and cultures are not the result of contact with other intelligences that are either still extant and hidden or departed. Local intelligences involved with our planet. And so these ideas of angels, devas, jinn, daimons. Socrates apparently had a daimon, but there's no evidence he worshipped it. And primarily the benefit that he accrued from Congress with it was something pretty trippy. It was a negative intelligence. Right? It told him what not to do and what was not so, right? What was not the case. It did not apparently require or naturally produce worship. Neither did the intelligence that was with my mind in 2002. It did not require worship, and it did not request worship. Though I would say it naturally inclined one toward ecstatic, adoration. It was more like a beloved companion, an anciently recognizable friend, maybe even the companion. So what would shock me would be to discover that humans were entirely alone throughout their developmental history. I think it's almost impossible. There's nearly no chance that that's what was going on. And men and women throughout history have had profound congress, an illuminative congress, right? As if a form of light is being transmitted into them. And I have seen this form of light in human beings. You can sense, I could sense a mode of illumination that isn't visual, right? As if the humans themselves were generating a kind of light that stops just short of emerging as the kinds of light we are familiar with. Many men, women, children throughout history have participated in relationships that involve the exchange of something we could think of as soul light or origin light, or living light in the heart, which overcomes the mind. We have this stuff called music. Which one might understand from an unusual angle as sound that illuminates the complexities of synchronization in nature, our hearts. There is a source of ecstasy, meaning literally like ecstasis, to escape the cage, right? To exceed the structure, to be liberated within, to maintain the structure while at the same time being liberated from its constraints or some of its constraints. Ecstasis. And this ecstasis, no idea what this person is doing. Obviously somebody here is confused. Not terribly surprising. Yeah. If anyone's confused, it must be me, because for all my apparent sophistication, I am easily overwhelmed by my own suppositional ignorance or habit or vulnerability or whatever. I'm not trying to teach anyone anything here. More or less, I'm attempting to understand in my own way, new features of the topics that I orbit by circling them in consciousness and changing the elevation of my perspective somewhat. Under the influence of certain forms of internal illumination, one does not sing because it is required. One does not sing because everyone else is singing. One sings under this influence that I speak of. In the same way one moves one's limbs to attempt to remain afloat in water. One sings because one cannot help it. There must emerge some expression of the ecstasis in the heart and the mind. The intellect liberated from the chains of reason, rationality, description, and so on. When the heart flies, the mouth is inclined to sing, and the body is inclined to dance. Though we might sing and dance for other reasons and to fulfill other urgencies. I hope that some of those of you who listen to my work might receive some light, some reflection of the living light.
Which kind of scared me because they said that originally that tank was a planted tank. And I'm like, either you had a fire.
Once again, the enthusiasm of togetherness increases the volume of voices. That thu refers to God, by the way, or the filler of cups. That thu in enthusiasm. And the asm denotes a transformation. It also points in the direction of ecstasy, as in the word orgasm. Org probably refers to the idea of embodiment here, or body, so that the organon is a body of work. And an organelle is a little body within. And an orgasm is ecstasis of the body. Asm. In English words like those I've mentioned, and what else? I have come back to the noisy, busy, trafficked part of the city from the gardens and park. And so perhaps for now, I will rest my voice and my inquiries. And wish you beautiful minds, lives, and ways. Beautiful relationships, opportunities, discoveries, and relationships. Thank you for joining me. I look forward to learning together again very soon. Bye-bye for now.